What's up, military millionaires? I'm your host, David Pere, and I'm here with my co-host, Alex Felice. And today we have two incredible investors, both Doug Nordman and Rich Carey. Doug is a retired Navy veteran, and Rich is now a retired Air Force veteran. Both own real estate. I don't know that Doug would identify as a real estate investor by choice. He is a massive index fund guy and basically like the father of the military financial independence movement, military guide, fire extraordinaire, and the guy who really got.
One day they'll be talking about you that way.
he's the guy who got me into FinCon, right? Without Doug, I would have never gone to FinCon. I would have never gone to the Military Influencer Conference. I never would have left Oahu for any conferences. I never would have met Alex without you. I don't think I should be thanking you for this anymore. And then Rich, actually, I met Rich out there in Hawaii with Doug and Brandon Turner and some of those guys. And Rich is at the time owned 20 single family homes, cash. And now he's taken on a little bit of debt and he's retired completely. And so this is going to be fun because this is two gentlemen who have completely and totally shown that you can achieve financial independence through the military and never have to work again. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Military Millionaire Podcast, where we teach service members, veterans, and their families how to build wealth through personal finance, entrepreneurship, and real estate investing. I'm your host, David Pere, and together with my co-host, Alex Felice, we're here to be your no BS guides along the most important mission you'll ever embark on, your finances.
Vehicle 1, you're clear to depart friendly lines.
Roger, Vic 1, Oscar Mike.
Thank you. Awesome to be here again.
I can't wait to give you a surf update, but I think it's just going to make you sad with that San Diego weather and the way it's been over here. So we'll just skip right over that and get to whatever your question was.
Why don't you guys give us just like a short, 2-3 minute update on? We'll go with Rich first on how life's been since the last time we. I guess the last time we talked crap, there weren't any conferences this year. It really has been a year.
Maybe it has been a while. Sure. All right. I guess so. So to catch you up on what's been going on in my life. So I retired from the Air Force on August 1st, 2020. Obviously, that 2020 was a weird year for everybody. Certainly a weird year for me. I served from 17 and 19. I served in Korea. And then I set it up so that I could leave my career field. I was an OSI agent, leave my career field and go to War College and teach my last year and basically go out of my command. And I did that because that's where my rental properties were. And I wanted to retire in the place where they were and kind of figure out what I was going to do with real estate, from then on out. So that worked for me. I ended up being able to retire in Montgomery, Alabama. That's where I owned 20 single family homes that I paid cash for one by one over the years. Now, what I did during COVID was interesting, especially for those that kind of have heard my story and heard me talk about this before. I've kind of been a no debt guy. Debt is so cheap right now. And, the interest rates have gotten so low that the stuff I bought 6 months ago, people are telling me I should refinance. But I bought a fourplex and a six-plex with loans, and one was commercial and one was in my personal name. Did that during the pandemic. And it's probably something worth talking about a little bit more, why I decided to do that during the pandemic. I mean, I think I was like one of the first people to close, with like a mask on in a room by myself. And then since then, another thing that I did that helped a lot financially was that I took over management of my own properties. I had a property manager for the past 5 or 6 years. Taking over my own management probably freed up $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Not to mention I've cut expenses. I'm doing things better and smoother. I understand what's going on with my properties now. Caught up on deferred maintenance, and it's just extra money in the bank.
Except for the part about the part-time job.
Except for the part-time job. But I mean, getting to that, it has not been that much more work. If you're doing a good job watching your property manager, it's not that much more to do it yourself. That's if you live there. Now, I didn't live there before, so it wouldn't have worked. So anyway, that's me talking too much, and there's my spiel.
And Mr. Nordman, How have you been?
Well, it's been an interesting year. We visited our granddaughter way back in early 2020 and got back just as we were all shutting down for COVID. And in fact, when we got back in March, my wife and I spent 2 weeks literally in the house, not just social isolation, but also quarantine. And so since March, we've been home. We had problematic tenants. I guess that's the most polite way to say that. And having tenants that you are not able to evict during the pandemic looked like it was going to be a serious issue. The tenants themselves decided to leave in September. And if there's anything good to come out of having a pandemic where you're not able to leave the island, we were able to spend plenty of quality time in that rental property after the tenants left, getting things turned around and fixed up, and spend a couple months worth of cash flow on getting ready for the next tenant. Things are much better now. That's going very well. We're pretty much finishing winter surfing here. Got Rich here visiting for a few weeks, and got some other friends up the road staying here in the neighborhood. Lots of surfing going on for the next few months. But I'm waiting for a vaccine, and I figure the vaccine will be here by June or July. I've got tickets for FinCon 21 in September.
I got the vaccine. It's not that exciting.
I'd love to be bored myself. Yes.
I got a second dose in a week, and apparently that's the one that kills you. But no, I don't know. I've no side effects, nothing. Felt fine.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Rich, I don't know the whole story, but to me, it seems like, okay, if you don't want to do debt, and then you said, okay, well, now I want to do debt.
Right.
How low do interest rates have to be?
Well, okay, that makes a big part of it. But for me, I look at debt as a tool to scale.
Yeah.
Now there is a financial incentive that it's so cheap. I get that, but you didn't really need it. So you said, okay, this is a tool to scale. And then you started managing your own properties, which is the opposite of scale. How do you reconcile those two decisions?
Yeah. Okay. I think for me, first of all, I think for me, it was never about avoiding debt. There was a time when, there was a time, and I think it was around 2008 for a few years, where I was flipping properties with a partner from, I was in Japan, and then my partner was in DC, and that's where we were flipping houses. Flipping houses with him, I was financing the deals, and he was doing the work on the ground. And the down payments on the properties that I was flipping were $80,000 to $100,000. Those were the down payments, and I was coming up with that money. When I got to Montgomery, Alabama, and it was time to buy properties there, and I realized, like, wow, these are going to cash flow really well. This is going to be awesome. First property was going to be like $30,000. And in my mind, I'm thinking $30,000, that's like almost a third of what I'm paying for a down payment for these houses that I'm flipping.
Oh, by 19.
And then when I tried to go get financing for them, it was like hard. I mean, nobody wanted to like finance these smaller houses. Now, eventually I'm buying houses that are $45,000, and at the most I paid about $60,000. But I had the cash because I'd paid off this primary residence and I'd saved up money over the years and been frugal and all that stuff. I had the cash, and I actually financed one of the properties, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. It took a long time, and it cost a lot more money than I expected it to. I just kind of defaulted into, I guess I'll just pay for these as I go. Never was against using debt. In fact, I think it's smart to put 20% down and have a 30-year fixed loan. To me, nothing's better than being able to do that with these single family homes. So that's kind of how I ended up at 20 properties that were paid off. It just felt like it made sense to me to do it that way. And I liked the way that the cash flow felt. It wasn't, you're not also, paying off the mortgage. But at the same time, I've done the math, and I do realize that you're better off in the long run using debt. And when I got myself back to Montgomery, Alabama, I kind of felt like, because it's been several years, it's harder to find good deals, right? Market's hotter and all that. But now that I'm in Montgomery, Alabama, I'm able to network, I'm able to meet other investors, and everything came from, it came from off-market deals. It came from, having somebody bring you a deal that nobody else has seen yet. So I got good deals on properties, and I wanted to take advantage of this, and I didn't have the cash to do these deals. So I went with financing. And I guess that's how I'd reconcile that. As far as management goes, I'm blogging and writing and I'm making videos about real estate investing. And I felt like I would just have I'd have more to talk about. I'm learning the nuts and bolts of real estate. And someday if I own a 50 unit or 100 unit or 3,000 units, and I've managed my own properties for a couple of years, I just felt more qualified to deal with those issues.
Great answer, actually.
I was to say, I don't know that Alex could ask for a better answer than its content.
No, actually,
I agree.
Well, to be fair, I formulated the question to be wonky, but I knew that it was probably a reasonable idea. My partner, Roger, who I love to pieces, when I met him, he had 24 properties. They're all paid off because he's like, man, going to banks just always seemed like a pain. They were always just giving me a hard time. It was just always the difficult. And he's like, when I'm buying $40,000 properties that rent for $800, just buy them in cash. And then he ends up with 24 of these things. And he's like, and now, when you try to go do something bigger than a $30,000 to $50,000 property, it's like we bought you buy a couple $1 million property. It's like, dude, cash is not going to work anymore. We need a little more efficient strategy, especially when the rates are 3%.
Right.
So perfect answer, actually. And I find, for me, in my experience now, if you can get the 30-year Fannie Mae loan on a single family property, get it. If you can get a big Freddie Mac property and a big commercial, big non-recourse loan, get it. Yeah. Everything in between, pay cash.
True. Yeah. And so on the six-plex, they wanted to do a 5-year balloon, right? And they wanted to do, I think, 15-year amortization. And that was what was normal for Montgomery, Alabama. I had to fight. And also I had no debt, and I had a I guess you could say my financial background to them was like, well, this guy's in great shape. But that only got me 20-year amortization in a 7-year balloon. But 4% on a commercial, so not bad. But I much prefer my 30-year at 4% on the fourplex, and the cash flow is much, much better.
Yep.
Yeah, the debt really is, like you said, hey, I started buying debt because the debt got so cheap, and it's like, yeah, that really is the play. And I love that. And I got a similar loan. I got I ended up getting 10 over 20, but it's at 5%. Mm-hmm. Now that was last year, but still it's like, that doesn't sound bad. But when you start plugging the numbers in, you're like, man, 4% at 30 is real good.
Yeah, I know. And I think, and what makes me nervous, and I've heard, kind of the multifamily gurus warn about this, anything shorter than 5-year balloon these days when interest rates are this low. And then of course, you kind of feel like, are we close to some kind of bubble exploding, which they've been saying since, 2015.
Right.
Just makes you nervous. I mean, if you're forced to refinance when things are like a lot higher, even if you're cash flowing, that can become a problem.
The good news is, well, it's a little good that you have the short amortization period. So at least now you're getting some semblance of a chunk taken out of that. Yeah. So when you go to refinance it at 7 years, even if the rates are higher, it's like, well, you're 40% paid down, plus hopefully you've had some appreciation. So you got a little bit of wiggle room in there, hopefully. But
and I think another same. Yeah. I think another issue too for me is the size of that commercial property, right? It's for me, it's doable. I mean, if I had to pay it off, if I had to I guess I'll pay cash and just use my money and just like pay this thing off if I'm having trouble refinancing it or whatever. But of course, if I did that with a $2 or $3 million loan, then I'd be stuck, and then I'd have to worry about what am I going to do with my paid off properties to help save me on this property. And that would bother me. That would bother me a lot.
I got your solution. You ready? Yeah. I just closed on a $2.4 million loan, non-recourse.
Yeah. No, I'd love to go after non-recourse. That is the next move that I should make. Definitely.
I got a guy. Don't worry. I got it.
We should talk. That's awesome. I would love to have that.
What is my point? What is a podcast?
I did a loan last year that I did a loan just like that. It's like I said, mine's 10 over 20 with a little bit higher rate. So it's very similar. And that was one of my bugaboos. I'm like, dude, how many of these are you going to get before you start to worry, especially if you do one next year, the next year. And you're like, are we in a bubble? I don't know. If we find out and I'm caught, this is going to be a sad day. Right. So that's when I was like, I kind of learned what you're learning, what you figured out on that same one where you're like, this commercial loan is not my favorite. But you can get those government-backed Freddie Mac loans that are non-recourse. Yep. You get better rates. You get longer terms. You get more. And then my favorite part is they're assumable. So if in 5 years, the rates are in better shape, then my cap rate spread goes up. My valuation goes up, right? If interest rates go up and the loan's assumable, they can take this loan at 3.5%. I win. Either way, I win.
Yeah. And so, and Alex, another thing I'd want to bring up is like, it's me coming here to Hawaii, right? And coming to visit Doug, who's kind of like just like Dave put it, sort of this godfather of military finance figure in my life.
I love how uncomfortable that makes him.
and I'm doing my long-term planning. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my life now? Like, do I want to scale up to a 20,000 units and be like a Grant Cardone? Do I want to pay off all my properties and move here and surf? And I think that the answer is in the middle. I think the answer is in the middle there somewhere. But certainly, Doug is quick to remind me, do you really need more money? Like, do you need more money? Okay, I have 20 paid off properties and that's decent income. The 10 properties that I just bought, they cash flow pretty good. And I've got a significant amount of TSP and IRA because I was always maxing those things out, just kind of playing the whole FI game. I don't need to do a lot more. So I think I'm not always thinking as aggressive as a lot of the other people in our community are. And I'm taking it one step at a time. I think I'm considering a 12 to 16 unit maybe. I love the idea of doing it on my own. I had the chance to buy it.
Pace yourself. You're going to have to do this for the rest of your life here.
I had the chance to buy it during the pandemic, but I had primary residence plus the fourplex plus the six-plex all closed at the same time. Yeah. And the lender found out I was retiring, which is another story altogether. So that's kind of where I'm at mentally right now.
I love this because actually I find that most people, I found a similar problem last year where it's like, hey, I really don't need that much more money. I need some more money. I got to keep putting effort into this thing, but I don't need that much more money. And so now I'm starting to think about it. I'm like, well, I kind of just like the challenge. And so, the point is, I think it's actually, most people focus on this money problem as if it's the biggest problem of their life. And really the real problem for me is finding out, like, once I have enough money, what are you going to do with all your free time?
That's you're going to find something else that's challenging and fulfilling. And if it's real estate, you'll keep doing it.
But my point is simply it's a harder problem than the money problem. The money problem, it's like, hey, look, follow these rules and kind of just set it and forget it. At worst case scenario, you're going to be in really good shape if you, really take it seriously. But then it's like, once you have enough, Rich, you're a young fella. It's like, you got a lot of free time to spend over the next, 60 years.
Right. Yeah. I know. And
we'll figure this out. There's plenty of surf to be had, and he's got to raise a family and travel and all the other things going on in life.
I don't know. I'm just not saying it's an impossible problem. I'm just saying, like you alluded to, it's like, okay, how much money do I really need? Okay, I don't need that much. Now what am I going to do?
That's true. It really is true.
It can be a challenge, but again, the things that get you through the military career, the things that get you to retirement, you'll always find something you want to do. You'll be making videos probably until you just can't see what you're doing anymore. And I'll be writing for the next 40 or 50 years.
Yeah,
I know that's a frightening thought. Isn't it?
I have no idea what I'm talking about then.
All right. So I have a question for you guys. I'm going to turn this completely off real estate and back to like finance basics. I'm curious, and I feel like I probably have an idea what the answer is here, but you're both 401k, thrift savings plan, index fund. You are both way more intelligent on that than I am. In fact, Rich, I actually have an article open on my computer blog post that I started to write about TSP allocations because I like your article, and I'm pretty sure I've given up because I realize there's no way I can write an article that, like, I've been looking at yours and like 3 or 4 others, and I'm like, there's no reason for me to write this. I can't beat what Rich's TSP allocation blog is incredible, and there's no reason for me to compete with it. I haven't touched it in a while, but anyway, so all that to say, I'm curious, right? The whole world is freaking out about the stock market right now, and you guys are both very set it, forget it, simple path to wealth, index fund, TSP, 401k investors. I am getting more and more questions about should I move all my money to G Fund because we're obviously in a bubble? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I'm sure you're hearing them. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And for those of you who don't know enough about Doug's story, are we at 18, 19 years now that you've been retired, never worked again?
19 years in June. I know.
Yeah, living on your index fund. So you literally you understand this fundamentally and through practice. So I'm really curious to hear y'all's thoughts on what you're doing with everything going on.
That's Doug. Let Doug go on this. Yeah.
To be clear, what he's really asking you is, should he buy GameStop stock?
Yeah.
I think he should diversify. I think you want to buy Tesla and Facebook.
I have a picture of the Tulip Mania graph in my house that I bought.
Exactly.
I bought it because of Tesla this year.
Let me put it this way: when we were visiting our granddaughter in February, it took time since she was born in January. It took time for the parents to get the birth certificate and then mail that stuff off and get the social security number back and get the Fidelity 529 account established. It just took a lot of time for them to get all that stuff done while they were getting up 2 or 3 times in a mid-watch to feed and change diapers. It finally got done around the 20th of March. And that's when we gifted our granddaughter the money that you can give, total of $30,000 toward her 529 account. That money went into the stock market right around the 25th of March. And we had no way in knowing in advance whether that was the beginning of the recession or whether that was the pit of the stock market. What we knew was we wanted to give our granddaughter money to establish a 529 account. That's the only goal we had, was to get that money in there.
Hey guys, if you're looking to take your investing, business, life, or just yourself to the next level, then I have something for you. The War Room Real Estate Military Mastermind Group is a mastermind group that meets weekly in small groups of 5 to 6 people to help you hold yourself accountable and really experience that growth. But we also have a monthly guest speaker that we bring in, and we've had guest speakers that talk about mindfulness, taxes. We're bringing in somebody to talk about marketing. We bring in very specific topics that will adhere to very broad, any kind of real estate investing or entrepreneurship that you want to do, and will really help you out. And we let you ask these speakers questions and get very personal with them. And then back to the small groups, weekly accountability for what you're trying to achieve, and just being surrounded by like-minded people. And they say your network is your net worth. I know that's an overused phrase, but I recommend that you check it out. So just shoot an email to wrmastermind@gmail.com. Once again, that's wrmastermind@gmail.com, and we'll send you some more information.
Now, in retrospect, now that we know how that movie ends, our granddaughter's 529 account is up 52% in 2020. It looks brilliant, but that's not the way we did it. And it's the same thing with asset allocation. You're picking an asset allocation that you can live with. And this might be hard, right? When you're in the military, when you got a steady job or when you got steady cash flow from your rental properties, you're tempted to just go 100% stocks and small cap stocks and just let it run and see how fast it can grow. On the other hand, there's a lot of volatility in that. Math and logic might tell you to go for volatility and growth and high returns. But if you have trouble sleeping at night, and for those who are in a relationship, if you have trouble explaining it to your partner, then maybe it's time to back off the asset allocation. But the whole point is everything flows out of you figuring out what you can tolerate with an asset allocation. Reliable income, 100% stocks, that's great. If you're sleeping at night and you understand volatility and you're comfortable with it, that's even better. But if it upsets you, if you get an exercise like a pandemic where the whole market falls apart in 2 weeks, 30%, if you find that upsetting, then it's probably an indication you need to back off that asset allocation, put 10 or 20 or even 30% of your assets into something else. Maybe that's investment rental properties that have cash flow. Maybe it's a tips fund. I wouldn't recommend bond funds that are barely returning more than CDs right now. But if the volatility is upsetting, that's the best way to handle it. So when people ask me, oh my gosh, the market, GameStop, how am I going to invest now? I've got to stop putting any more money in my 401k until we figure out what's going on with GameStop. Well, the answer is that you have an asset allocation and you can probably overlook GameStop and keep investing and just ignore it.
Yeah. So
that's logic and math, but
if you want me to, GameStop has been flashy news, but I mean, if you just, I don't know what you guys' strategy is. I'm not a primarily investor. I buy SPY.
Exactly.
That's all I do. I buy SPY in and out. And I have a couple of Amazon shares because Amazon's like the best freaking, in my opinion, it's Although,
you're going to put a little bit of money in something like Amazon, and maybe 10% of your asset allocation goes into Amazon. And that way, if you turn out to be a brilliant investor, it's going to move the needle on your net worth. And it's small enough that it's going to limit the damage if it turns out you're not as brilliant as we all thought.
Yeah. But it turns out I was that brilliant.
Hey, you scared Bezos off. You made him resign and retire. I'm impressed.
So, Dave, can I, if I could jump in and add a little bit to this?
Of course.
So, you brought up that post that I did, right, about TSP allocation. And of course, I don't know if you know where I got the idea from, but are you familiar with the White Coat Investors 150 portfolios better than yours?
Yeah. Good one.
I have not seen that article. No,
I just link that to this article. It's awesome. So, I mean, that's something that you would use in your IRA or in your brokerage account. But basically, it's what I did, except that there's about 200 of them, and it is a totally awesome post. It is probably my favorite post of all time. But the point is, you want to pick an asset allocation that makes sense for you. And if you look at like my post and this other post where they list a bunch of different things you could do in your IRA or in your normal brokerage account and give you like the reasons, this is why this would be good, this is why this would be bad. You pick one, you stick with it for the long term, you invest that way, you ignore GameStop, you ignore Tesla, you ignore Bitcoin. You just kind of laugh when you hear people talking about that stuff and you just kind of chuckle to yourself or make fun of them publicly or however you decide to do it. But that kind of thinking, like that kind of stand around the cooler or chat on Facebook about, I bought this today and I'm buying this tomorrow and I made $50, I made 50% in 3 days. There is just literally no way. It is guaranteed that you are going to lose over the long term. I mean, people that do that have either lost a lot of money or have yet to lose a lot of money. There's no other explanation. That's my opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree with that.
You got to be right too many times.
Yeah. So I don't play that game. I just don't play that game.
I think that's been proven. I think Warren Buffett proved that people who pick individual stocks in the long run lose to the ETFs because, to beat the market means you have to beat the average of the market, which is hard enough on its own. And then you have to do it every year. So the people who won on GameStop, it's the Casino Conundrum, right? It's like you walk into the casino, you win big day one, right? It's like, okay, now you can never play again.
It's the worst thing that could happen. Yeah.
Go home. Yeah.
Because now every time you play, you're running. You basically hit the tail possibility day one, and now everything else is going to be the average, and the average is loss. And so the stock market is the same way. It's like I hit big on GameStop, I hit big on AMC. It's like, well, now every year, everybody else is going to earn their little 10%, and you have to beat 10% every year to avoid hitting that average. And odds are, statistically, if you pick those individual stocks, you're going to be below average because the market is hard to beat.
It is. It's hard. It can be beat. It's hard to beat, but it can be beat. The issue I have is that it turns into a full-time job, and I'd rather get 99.96% of the market return for about 1% of the personal effort.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be beat. I said it's hard. And
it's hard. Yeah.
I think I read Buffett's average is like 20%, which is incredible. But the S&P is like 9%. And you got to do nothing to earn the market average. So it's like, time is the asset you're really looking for, not learning the market.
Well, I'll tell you what's most telling to me is what Warren Buffett's doing with his money, when he passes away. I mean, and this tells you something. When he passes away, he's not having that money invested by his own company anymore. He's having it put in the S&P 500. They're going to put it in S&P 500 index. It's actually 90% S&P 500 index, 10% bonds. And that is how he is instructed that his money, the number one investor in the world, be invested for when he's gone. And I think that's very telling. And I've been running with that lesson since I was 20 years old, and it hasn't steered me wrong.
They just can't find somebody else who's willing to read 500 pages a day and spend their entire life learning about the stock market.
Yeah.
Yeah. To earn 20%, when 10%, you got to do nothing.
Yeah.
I'm happy with 10. Yeah.
And and that doesn't even account for the fact that these guys are paying short-term capital gains tax on top of this stuff. So for context for those listening, I don't ever talk about my fund allocation publicly just because I don't want people to take it as advice. So please just understand that I say this, and it's not me giving you advice. This is just what I've gone through. But I'm 75% C, 25% S, and I just leave it.
Yeah, I like it.
And that's just it. I was after reading Simple Path to Wealth, I was like, this seems to fit what I want. Rich actually had a hand in being one of the guys who helped proofread that book, and I think he was the one who turned me on.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a huge fan. And on my, that's my real estate diversification. I have, not nearly as much money as I should in there because I left it in the G fund for years. But when all this hit, I literally just took my 30% that goes into TSP and doubled it. And I was like, what? There was a 30% dip. I'm going to max this out this year and we'll see what happens. And that was a very good decision, I think, but I didn't tweak my allocations. And I think and this is obviously, I've had conversations with both of you about this, but I think that's the key, is just having an allocation where you're like, who cares? Like, I'm going to leave it. It's comfortable for me.
For your audience, there's another thing that I'd love to talk about real quick. And that is, we get real hung up on how much fun it is to make money in real estate. And you've got Facebook groups where everybody's bragging about how much they're making and how they're under contract on another 10 unit and they're burring the money out, and kind of the list goes on. And I think there's this fear of missing out. And certainly I think these military members come into these groups, your group and there's some other groups that are even just focusing on military real estate. And a lot of times they'll say something like, I've got to stop contributing to my TSP so I can put some money in real estate, or I've got to stop contributing to my IRA. And then there's something, you can take that a step further. I'm going to pull the money out of my TSP, right? Or I'm going to take a loan, right, against that money. My personal opinion, I really think that's a mistake. I love real estate. A lot of my wealth, a good portion of my wealth is in real estate. That's where I made a lot of my money. But from my perspective, and not everybody's going to feel this way, from my perspective, the index, the TSP and the IRA, that is your sure money. That is your sure retirement. Lock that down first. Make sure you're doing well in that department, then start responsibly investing in real estate. That is my approach to it. So
if you got a high savings rate, you're going to max out your TSP contributions, you're going to max out your IRA contributions, and then you're going to have money left over to go invest in real estate.
Yep. Yeah. Not also, easy to do at the beginning of your career, but possible. You're saying?
Yeah. Also, can I add that 401ks, TSPs, IRAs can be used as reserve requirements for loans. And so you're sitting there like, I'm gonna take my money out of my 401k. And I'm like, now you're gonna sit it in cash and wait when the bank says you need, 6 months PITI. So part of the thing, I don't do too much with 401ks and IRAs because I don't ever work long enough to when I work, I put in.
Okay, that's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. But when I don't, I do my IRA contributions at the end of the year to reduce my taxable income now. But I always love people like, why don't you cash your 401k out and buy real estate? I'm like, my 401k hedges against my potentially bad real estate decisions. What if real estate doesn't go that well? It's like that 401k can save you, not to mention it helps you with the bank requirements. Otherwise, you're sitting on cash. So
for this real estate plan to go bad, there'd have to be something like a global pandemic before this whole plan would fail.
Well, but you know what I mean, right? I'm less worried about real estate, more worried about me.
Groceries.
Just to run with that a little bit more, because I agree 100%. So I tell people all the time, like the coolest thing for me about the TSP is that it counts as reserves, but only for the purchasing, right? So I could use the same 50,000 in that TSP for every purchase I make and be like, oh yeah, to an extent, right? But the cool thing for me, the incredible thing for me, and the piece that really drove the TSP home for me, even though I made all these mistakes with wrong contributions and not allocating enough as a young Marine, when the pandemic hit, I literally pulled up all my properties and I was like, okay, if I'm at 100% vacancy, how long can I hold it if I have to liquidate my TSP? And it was like 19 months. I was like, okay, I have enough money in my TSP that if I have 100% vacancy, I can run these properties for a year and a half without a single tenant off this.
Perfect.
Like that to me, that peace of mind is just incredible. Just knowing that, hey, this thing's over here. And if I have to pay off all my bad debt or pay out, like if something terrible happens, like I'm not going to spend that, because if that was in a savings account, I would find a property to put it in. It would get spent. I think for people like me who are very aggressive, having an account that you physically can't touch and just telling yourself it's off limits is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
perfect.
And so, you bring that up. The beginning of the pandemic was like, there was a realization for me. A lot of times having all your properties paid off just seems like overkill and just seems absurd. And in most cases it is. But certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, that did not seem absurd to a lot of people. And so I'm sitting there going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if nobody pays? Like, I'm going to be really annoyed, because I used to get, this much money a month and now I'm getting none, but I still have my military paycheck, and I'm going to have my retirement paycheck, and I still have all this money in TSP and IRAs. Like there was actually no risk for me. In fact, that's where I kind of decided, like, I'm really in a safe enough position that even as a conservative real estate investor, I really should buy some real estate right now. And the funny thing was, there weren't even really great deals because we never really got into something scary where things got crazy and there's no fire sales, right? But I still went out and bought. But that is when having paid off real estate can give some amazing peace of mind. And if things would have gotten bad, that would have been a decent place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody prudent worried in March last year when they're like, we don't know. This thing could be calamitous. I don't know. Turned out that it's been largely
okay. The most okay.
Yeah, not so bad. And the real estate market, goodness gracious, if you're a broker, oh my God.
I know.
But I have all debt on my properties and I love it so much. I'll never get rid of it. As soon as it's paid off, I'm getting more debt. But that's my style, right? But I have capital, I have cash, and I live mega light. So that's the other part of that. We're talking about financial freedom. It's like, bro, I live. We had a 20-year-old kid on earlier on the podcast, and I'm like, my cost of living is probably close to his.
Well, you not only play good defense, but you're also investing in good deals. You're not going in there and hoping for appreciation to salvage all the rest of the numbers.
I haven't bought a single family home since early 2019 because the prices got so it got very competitive for me, and I don't mind competing, but it's kind of like we talked about where in a similar vein to you, it's like, I don't have 20, but I have 8 and they all run right. And I'm sitting here like, I don't need that much more. So for me, all my deals have 40% equity, if not better now. And they cash flow. And I live in a market that, we live in a military market, so not much volatility. But I love having guests on here that are risk averse.
So I'd be curious to ask a loaded question real quick for Doug. I don't know if this is loaded, but so obviously with the VA loan not having a cap, there's a lot of potential out here now to buy. I've got friends who've bought like $1 million fourplexes where they literally live for free. And there's some cool, obviously I don't advocate this for people who don't have good financial backings. Like I got a friend who has like $50K in his checking account as a sergeant and bought like a $1.2 million house and he gets paid to live in it. Pretty sweet deal, right?
Okay.
And he's going to live there for, whatever. Anyway, my question for you is, right, because I am like you two gentlemen, I'm a cash flow guy. I understand the appreciation play, but it's not my main game. I much prefer the cash flow where when everything goes wrong, I can cover my expenses. Doug, you live in probably one of the 2 or 3 top like king markets for the phrase, the appreciation will make up for, whatever. And you have I know you own 2. You've owned one of those houses for, correct me if I'm wrong, like 15, 20 years?
31 years.
This one, right?
Going on
this
32.
House.
All right. So this house right here
yeah.
is 21 years, but the rental property has been 31 years.
Okay. So my question for you, I guess, is because I know you're more conservative and you have not been a huge fan of your real estate per se, is what do you think of that in an appreciation market? Like, what are your thoughts on that mentality when it's not a place where you're going to be able to, if you're saving money on your mortgage to live there or you're going to live in it forever, like there's an argument to be made there, but I'm just curious kind of your thoughts on that.
No, if you're trying to make money in real estate on Oahu, you're probably doing a live-in flip. You're probably doing a gut to the studs rehab, or you're house hacking. And those are the people that are reliably making money because they're adding value. They're buying at a very big discount, or they're buying at market and making it a higher value. We have watched appreciation over the last 31 years at just over 2.2%, about the rate of inflation. And meanwhile, if that money had been in the stock market, it's not about the appreciation of the real estate, it's about the opportunity cost. And if we had that money sitting in the stock market during that same time, we would have looked at an average annual return of roughly 9 to 12%. So I would much rather have not learned everything I've learned about being a landlord from that property and just had that in the stock market. Now, for many very good reasons, we did keep that property, and family is one of the reasons we kept that property. We have had family living in it over the years, and we want to make sure that when our daughter and our son-in-law return to the island, that they can get started, have a place to live, and work up from there. So family's a bigger reason than the cash flow or the appreciation. But if you're going to come invest, this is a place where you rent, where you're living, or where you house hack, and then you go and invest in real estate just about anywhere else in the mainland. And there's a lot more places in the mainland that make sense to do that for the cash flow.
Yeah, if I could add on to that for a sec, I think what people do when they come to Hawaii is they hear that the person that bought here a couple of years ago just made $100,000, right, in 1 year. And, there's stories about the person that, bought and then owned it for 3 years and sold, and, it was a $300,000 profit. That kind of appreciation happens. Like there are years where it goes up 15%, and then it might go up 15% the next year. And then it might go up 10% the next year. But what people don't understand is then there might be an 8-year time frame where it's flat, and then it might dip for some reason. And I think the point is, we're seeing kind of this sexy rise and hearing all these stories, but in reality, over the long term, you're still not doing anything extraordinarily better than any other market. And so I think that's where people go wrong.
And we can look out this window at 3,000 new homes that are being built that are going to go on the market, brand new real estate in a couple of years, and down H1 a few more miles. Ho'opili is going to bring 15,000 homes onto the island over the next 5 years. I'd hate to be buying now and hoping for appreciation in that kind of a market.
When you have so much sprawl. Yeah. I think that's kind of what we talked about earlier. It's shiny object syndrome.
Oh,
and
yeah.
People don't have, I have a friend who she went from luck. She got lucky in life. She went from living, making a minimum wage or 30, 40 grand a year to now she's going to make like 350 grand. And she's like, I don't know what to do with the money. And I'm like, that's what gets people in trouble. And that's why people chase flyers and GameStop and Bitcoin. And they're like, somebody just made $20,000. And you're like, yeah, you might make $20,000. But if you do this prudently, you 100% will make $20,000. And so people don't have a strategy. And so they're like, somebody else made all this money. This is what happened okay, that's a mistake to say. This is what happened in 2008. But it's part of what happened in 2007 and 8, where people are like, the last guy made 50% appreciation. I'll make 50% appreciation. Don't think about it. Real estate can only go up. Close. And it's like, dude, if you had just stuck that in the SPY, you'd have been okay, or VTX, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's like the people who roll a dice 5 times and 4 times they get a 6, and then they're like, well, I'm just going to bet on 6 because obviously if 6 happened the last 4 times, it's going to happen again. It's like, yeah, past performance doesn't indicate the future, man. And people, and that's a
opposite of how math works.
Yeah, and that's a psychological flaw, but it's very easy to see it happen to people. Man.
And on that note,
yeah. So I know it's dinner time, and I guess my one question for you both before we roll would just be if you had one piece of advice for just most of our listeners, or a large chunk of our listeners, are new young service members. So like one piece of advice that you think is like the one thing you wish every service member knew when they joined the military financially, what would it be?
Oh, that's easy. I'll go first.
Okay.
Track your spending. Track every penny that leaves your wallet for the next few months and find out where the money's going.
Yeah.
For military members, I want to give 2 because I'll say one really quick. Number 1, invest from a financial position of strength.
Yep.
So do the TSP and the IRA first and get some money saved up, get rid of some debt. The next thing is, in the military, don't buy a house at every duty station. Okay.
Yeah, learn from us.
I don't buy a house unless that house will make money as a rental property when I move away. And that is something that you should think about if you're in the military and you're going to move every 1 to 3 years.
Now they tell me.
That is such a common piece of that is such a good piece of advice, because so many people, I had that idea. I'm like, I'll just buy one at every duty station. Yeah. And that sounds good, but it's actually a really lousy strategy. Yeah. And you do the opposite of scale, right? You have no scale, efficiency of scale. You're just
Yeah,
create
management's
more work for
tough.
yourself.
Management's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you said that. That's really good advice. Both of those pieces of advice
man.
are good.
Gentlemen, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and joining us and not having surfboards in the background.
Yeah, not this time.
That was a lot of fun, you guys. Thanks for having us on. This was great. Hope to see you guys in person soon.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, David.
Thank you for listening to another episode about my journey from military to millionaire. If you liked it, be sure to visit FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast to subscribe to future podcasts. While you're there, we'd love for you to rate the show, give us a review on iTunes. Now get out there and take action.